It began, like most dangerous things, with a spark. Not the catastrophic kind, the ones that shut down reactor grids and leave whole quadrants in the dark, but the subtle kind. The kind that jumps behind your ribs and makes your brain short-circuit when your mouth's supposed to be closed. Caleb Rohn stood in Bay D9, grease on his hands, nano-sealant gumming up the cuffs of his uniform, staring like an idiot across the hangar deck. She was there again. Caleth. Not that she acknowledged anyone's presence, let alone his. She moved like a probability wave collapsing into perfection. Too elegant for a place patched together with repurposed hull plates and vending machines that screamed at you in 12 languages. The Vayari ambassador never spoke, never laughed, never tripped on loose wiring like the rest of them. She just observed. And Rohn, assigned yet again to recalibrate the docking clamps after the last dignitary's cruiser disengaged a little too enthusiastically, had precisely 24 minutes to stop watching her and get the job done. Instead, he stood with a plasma wrench in one hand and a broken clamp diagnostic screen in the other, mentally composing apologies to his supervisor. Caleth drifted toward a crate, one of the newer ones, marked with Vayari script that shimmered slightly when the light hit it wrong. She pressed a hand against it, long fingers splaying out like she was reading more than material. Rohn pretended to focus on his screen, which displayed an unhelpful blinking icon labeled Error. No context. It was hard to tell if it was talking about the clamp or his current life choices. "Hey, you don't want to stand too close to that crate," he said out loud before his brain caught up. "It's got unstable graviton shielding. Last time someone leaned on one, they got a haircut they didn't ask for, from the inside." She didn't move, didn't look at him. Cool, talking to walls again. Classic Tuesday. Rohn tried to turn back to work, but his mouth had other ideas. Though if anyone could pull off a self-inflicted quantum buzzcut, it's probably you. Still nothing. He knelt, cursing softly as the clamp's override port rejected his second attempt. The diagnostics were a mess. Half the subroutines were in languages he didn't speak and the other half were in emoji. He jabbed a finger at the screen. "Don't sass me," he muttered. "Your tools are inefficient," said a voice. Rohn froze. Not because someone had spoken, people talked to him all the time, mostly to tell him what he'd broken, but because that voice was crystalline. Like sonar played through wind chimes, and because it had come from 5 feet to his left. He turned his head slowly. Caleth hadn't moved much, just angled herself slightly, long ears tilted forward, pupils refracting a geometry his brain refused to parse. "You wait, you just spoke." She inclined her head. Rohn blinked. "Okay, wow, that's new. Should I log this as a diplomatic event? Is this technically a first contact situation, or are we like on our second and a half?" Her eyes did something he wasn't ready for. They crinkled slightly. Not a smile, not exactly, but not disapproval either. "It is unwise to comment aloud on the gravitational aesthetics of sealed cargo," she said, "especially while kneeling in oil." Rohn looked down, yep, knees soaked. "Right, point taken." She turned to go. "Wait," he blurted, and because his brain had clearly left for vacation without telling him, he added softly, "of extraordinary beauty." She paused, not in that casual, ambient way some people pause to pretend they didn't hear something awkward. No, she paused like time itself reconsidered how forward momentum worked. Then she slowly turned her head, not fully. Just enough for him to see her expression shift into something unreadable and yet devastatingly present. Rohn realized 3 things at once. 1, he had definitely said that out loud. 2, that was not protocol. 3, he was about to die or get assigned to sewage maintenance. But she didn't incinerate him with a neural beam or report him to the Interspecies Conduct Board. Instead, she said, "Beauty is a strange metric for a species that invents weapons before art." Rohn rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, we multitask." She considered him. "I have observed." That wasn't entirely comforting. "I mean, look, I wasn't trying to be weird," he said quickly. It just slipped out, the words, not a pickup line. More of a brain hiccup, like a software crash but with feelings. Her ears flicked, almost imperceptibly. Feelings are volatile software. He grinned. You don't know the half of it. Mine crash constantly, sometimes just from waking up. For a moment there was silence. Then she stepped closer, inspecting the mess of tools beside him. These instruments, are they your standard interface with malfunctioning systems? He looked down. The toolkit was a disaster. There was a mini plasma torch with a cracked handle, a diagnostic pad from 2 generations ago, and a screwdriver he'd definitely stolen from a vending unit. Define standard. She picked up the pad, tapped it once, and the blinking error vanished. The clamp cycled with a soft hiss. Roan's jaw dropped. What did you even do? I asked it to listen. He squinted at her. Is that a metaphor, or is your tech just polite? She handed the pad back. Both. Roan looked at her with something close to awe, not just because she fixed what he couldn't, but because she'd spoken to him. Really spoken. And hadn't disappeared behind a wall of formal silence or diplomatic distance. Thanks, he said, voice low. You are welcome, she said, and turned to leave. Wait, he said again, then regretted it. Sorry, if this is the part where I get in trouble, could we maybe pretend it was all a deeply unfortunate translation error? She stopped, looked over her shoulder. There are no charges for honesty, she said. Yet. And then she was gone. Roan stood there for a while, watching the empty space where she'd been until the clamp gave a cheerful ding and tried to close on his boot. Right, he muttered. Back to work. No falling in love with diplomats. Especially ones who can reboot reality with a glare. The clamp tried again. He kicked it lightly. You're jealous, he said. It hissed. He grinned. You'll get over it. The next morning, Caleb Roan walked into Central Systems Maintenance holding 2 coffees, one slightly less terrible than the other. He set the better one down next to a glowing orb labeled CISA, Central Intelligence Systems Assistant, and muttered, bribery, old Earth tradition. Now please don't crash the humidity regulators again. CISA emitted a non-committal beep. He took that as a maybe. The hangar from yesterday was empty. No diplomats. No crates threatening to explode in tasteful bursts of graviton panic. No silent alien emissaries who somehow had better comic timing than most human comedians. Roan shook his head. She'd spoken. Twice. Possibly 3 times, depending on whether her ears flicking counted. He was halfway through his second sip when LT, Rana from security, slid into the room with the grace of someone fueled entirely by paranoia and espresso. She said, you broke protocol. Roan blinked. I do that every day. You'll have to narrow it down. With Caliph. Oh, right. He cleared his throat. Technically, I think she broke protocol first. She started talking. I was just emotionally reacting. She submitted a report. He blinked. What? Rana shoved a tablet at him. The header read, Observation of verbal interaction with human personnel, subject. Roan Caleb, Junior Maintenance Officer, probationary. The next line said simply, Human expression classified as honest anomaly. Recommend further study. Roan stared. Further study? Am I being upgraded or dissected? Rana snorted. Neither, but the ambassador has requested your presence, in the Vayari wing, in 30 minutes. He saluted with his coffee. I'll bring my lucky multi-tool. She snatched the bad coffee on her way out. You'll need more than that. Exactly 32 minutes later, he stopped for a donut. Roan found himself walking through an archway that adjusted its molecular resonance based on who passed through it. The Vayari wing didn't exactly scream, welcome. It whispered, please don't touch anything or you might disintegrate diplomatically. The walls pulsed faintly with energy fields. The lighting adjusted to his heart rate, which was doing strange things, probably the donut. Definitely the alien woman waiting at the far end of the corridor, her hands clasped behind her back, ears upright like signal towers. Ambassador Caliph, he said, and then added, I brought a donut, but it didn't survive the gravity shift. She tilted her head. A ritual sacrifice. Something like that. Silence. Then her ears did the thing again, the flick. Amusement. You are efficient in emotional projection. Roan grinned. Well, I've had a lot of practice being awkward in close proximity to terrifyingly graceful beings. She walked slowly toward a side chamber. He followed, resisting the urge to narrate his own death march. Inside, the space was unlike anything else on Station HFY IX. Instead of consoles and chairs, the room featured vertical streams of hovering data, a living archive of symbols that rearranged themselves depending on how you stood. Caliph gestured and the streams rotated, resolving into a schematic. You are familiar with Vayari vessels? She asked. Vaguely. I once tried to fix a Vayari waste recycler. It erased my name from the maintenance logs. Smart machine. Ouch. She pointed to a node in the schematic. This interface is malfunctioning. It refuses our command inputs. We believe it is reacting to proximity bias. Bias against whom? Us. Roan looked at her, then at the display. You think your own ship won't talk to you. It suspects we have become compromised by human influence. He choked. Wait, because you talked to me. Her ears shifted slightly. Because I listened. Roan stepped closer to the schematic. Well, I'm human. I'm basically the galactic standard for bad ideas. Maybe I can offend it into working. She didn't stop him. That was either trust or a mistake. The interface flared as he approached. Letters reshaped themselves into a hybrid form, half Vayari glyph, half human alphabet. A blinking message appeared. Query. Do you trust this life form? Roan grinned. Buddy, you have no idea how much no one does. He tapped the message. The interface flared, dimmed, then opened a diagnostic menu. Caliph's brow lifted just slightly. I think it likes me, he said. Either that or it's waiting to vaporize me once I hit confirm. No disintegration protocols are active, she replied. Yet. They began repairs. It was slow work. The ship's AI used emotional thresholds as encryption keys. At one point, it refused to open a critical panel unless Roan described his most embarrassing childhood memory. I once told a girl I liked that I had two hearts, he confessed. Thought it would make me seem exotic. She asked if one was just afraid of commitment. The panel opened. Caliph murmured, efficient projection indeed. After 2 hours, they'd restored partial control. The AI's mood appeared to be improving. Caliph leaned against the console, her voice softer than before. This collaboration is irregular. You say that like it's a bad thing. It is statistically rare. So's a good hair day on the station. She looked at him, and for a brief moment he saw something not just ancient but curious. Like she was recalculating everything she thought she knew about humans and finding the result just slightly absurd. He sat back, rubbing his hands. You ever wonder if the galaxy's just a giant social experiment by a bored AI? Frequently. Same. You ever think the reason we haven't blown ourselves up is because no one wants to clean up afterward? I assumed it was because you enjoy the sound of your own language too much to annihilate yourselves completely. Roan laughed. We do like to talk, sometimes even to people who don't answer. Caliph didn't smile, not fully. But her ears bent backward slightly. It was enough. As they walked back toward the central corridor, Roan glanced sideways at her. You know, this was the most productive diplomatic engagement I've had all week. I would advise against logging it that way. I was thinking of calling it the incident with the emotionally volatile interface and the donut that died. Succinct. Working title. They paused outside the Vayari threshold. She looked at him once more. I will speak to you again. Is that a promise or a warning? Her head tilted. Yes. She disappeared behind the phase curtain before he could ask for clarification. Roan stood there, smiling to himself like an idiot, until the corridor lights pulsed red to remind him that break time was over and quantum maintenance never sleeps. The next time Roan saw Caliph, She was suspended midair inside a rotating zero-G diagnostic column, completely motionless except for her eyes, which tracked 3 streams of data flowing around her in tight spirals. He stood at the threshold like a man about to walk into a religious site wearing a band t-shirt and half a sandwich in his pocket. Ambassador Caliph, he ventured. I brought snacks, also questions. She rotated a few degrees, stopped, and hovered there like a sculpture that had grown bored of being admired. The system is responsive to kinetic silence. Please maintain your questions at a non-destructive frequency. Roan raised both hands. Roger that. My last attempt at productive inquiry led to a minor blackout in habitation, Deck C turns out. Asking an AI if it's feeling okay triggers its existential panic subroutine. Caliph descended gently from the column and touched down without a sound. Her ears twitched. Your reputation precedes you, also your maintenance history. He winced. Those reports are wildly exaggerated and poorly formatted. Who uses Comic Sans on an incident report? You did. I was trying to disarm the situation with levity, and also I was out of fonts. She gestured for him to follow her. The matter is no longer one of malfunction. There is something embedded within the diagnostic loops. Like a virus. No, more like a recording, hidden beneath temporal layering. Roan blinked. Okay, I'm going to pretend I know what that means until you finish explaining it. Caliph stepped toward a control panel and projected the layered diagnostics onto the air. Thousands of Vayari symbols shimmered in spiraling constellations. In the center, a slow pulse beat like a synthetic heart. Roan leaned closer. Is that a distress signal? Caliph's gaze narrowed. It is a memory, one the system is not supposed to retain. A voice began to emerge, garbled then clearer. Female, Vayari, older. Loss is unsustainable. Initiate silence doctrine. If any survive, remember the cost. Do not let them speak. Not again. The chamber dimmed. Caliph stood very still. Roan cleared his throat carefully. Sue, that sounded ominous. On a scale from oops, we triggered a minor alert to congratulations. The galaxy now has an expiration date. Where are we? Caliph responded without looking at him. This vessel contains remnants of the Saravan Protocol, a failed containment of cognitive resonance weaponry. He nodded slowly. Right, definitely going to pretend I understood that. Also going to ask what it actually is before I lose sleep imagining worse. Caliph tapped the pulse. It halted, the sound vanishing instantly. The Vayari once developed systems that turned thought into energy, speech into force, emotion into structure. Our language shaped reality, beautiful, terrifying, and ultimately uncontainable. Roan raised his eyebrows. You mean you could say something and make it happen? Not immediately, not always, but with precision, yes. That's either the best or worst idea anyone's ever had. He paused. Wait, you said once. You don't have this tech anymore. We abandoned it, buried it, chose silence, chose caution, but some systems remember. Roan rubbed his face. Let me guess. One of those memory systems is now connected to a very unstable, very large piece of old tech currently docked to our station. Caliph's silence confirmed it. Great, he muttered. So not only did we park a ghost ship with reality-warping tech next to a cafeteria that can't even get my coffee order right, but we also accidentally rebooted a centuries-old trauma archive. The analogy is crude, but correct. Roan looked up at the data streams. Okay, so what's the plan? I assume the usual turn it off and on again won't help. Caliph moved toward a console. We must isolate the linguistic threads. Translate them. Erase the surviving sequence. You want me to delete your culture's ancient mind-melting language file. I want you to help me disarm it without triggering a recursive manifestation loop. He sighed. That's fair. Though it does sound like something I once did with an X. They worked for hours. The interface grew less cooperative as they closed in on the core code. Roan's fingers flew across his pad. occasionally swatting away holographic prompts that insisted he answer riddles before proceeding. Caliph watched. "You are not entirely incompetent. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me this week. Even my toaster tried to fight me this morning." Her ears twitched. Roan was starting to think that was her version of a laugh. At one point the AI pulsed with new energy. A swirling glyph appeared between them. Caliph froze. "That is not a stored memory, that is a query." Roan tilted his head. "What kind of query?" "It is asking for a speaker." Roan held up both hands. "Nope, not it. I already accidentally proposed to a cleaning drone once. I'm not becoming a cosmic microphone." The glyph pulsed again. Then another joined it. Caliph leaned forward. "They are aligning. Choosing syntax, it wants access. To me. To both of us." The chamber trembled slightly. Roan's wristpad buzzed violently, then displayed one line of text. "Shall we speak together?" Caliph met his gaze. "This is the moment." He swallowed. "No pressure, right? Only if we fail." He took a breath. "Okay, what do we say?" Caliph closed her eyes. "Anything, everything, but say it truly." Roan nodded. "All right." He leaned in and, with Caliph beside him, said the first thing that came to his mind. "Please, for the love of physics, do not explode." The glyphs shimmered. Caliph followed, speaking a Vyari phrase that translated roughly to, "We are not enemies of the past." A third glyph appeared, then the others dimmed. Silence followed. Roan looked around. "Did we win?" Caliph frowned. "The sequence ended." "That's vague." "It did not activate, it did not spread. So, we confused it into submission." "Possibly." Roan grinned. "Perfect, I specialize in confusion." Caliph turned toward him. "We are not finished." "No, but we're not vaporized either. That feels like a win." She stepped closer, ears low. "This knowledge is dangerous. Others will seek it." Roan nodded. "Then we keep it buried. And maybe next time someone unearths a haunted AI language weapon, they'll send more than 2 people and a bad wristpad." Caliph tilted her head. 3, I include myself." He smiled. "Right, of course, Team Weird." She didn't correct him. They left the chamber quietly, the system behind them humming softly, as if still listening. Roan opened the storage bay door with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for birthdays and buffet lines, only to be greeted by a minor explosion. A puff of blue mist shot past his head, singed his eyebrows, and smelled faintly of burnt cinnamon. He took a cautious step back. Well, either someone spiked the environmental systems with baking experiments again, or we've got a breach in the containment protocols for those experimental coolant crystals. From inside the haze, a voice groaned. "Nobody touch anything that's vibrating, humming, glowing, or whispering your name." Roan blinked. "Tallies, is that you?" A lanky figure emerged from the mist, his maintenance suit scorched at the edges, one boot missing, and a handheld sensor sparking like it was auditioning for a fireworks show. "Roan," he said. "Good, someone else to blame." Roan peered into the bay. Dozens of Vyari tech crates were stacked like a bad game of zero-G Jenga. In the center sat an open container marked with Vyari glyphs, more of those curling, fractal ones that Caliph said were precautionary expressions. Roan had translated that to "open at your own existential risk." "Please tell me this isn't what I think it is," Roan said. Tallies handed him a shard of cracked plating. "If you think it's a piece of linguistic reactive containment shielding that's been tampered with, congratulations. You're correct and also doomed." Roan stared. "Who tampered with it?" Tallies pointed toward the corner, where a small, orb-shaped repair bot whirred in innocent circles. "I blame it. You trained your vacuum drone to mess with ancient alien relics. I trained it to clean. It chose chaos." Roan sighed and activated his comm. "Caliph, we have a situation, and by situation I mean a very small robot may have accidentally reactivated a forbidden piece of language-based weaponry. Again." There was a pause. Then Caliph responded, "I am on my way. Do not speak to the artifact." "I mean define speak," Roan muttered, then looked at Tallies. You didn't say anything near it, did you? Tallies hesitated. I may have yelled at it when it sparked. Roan winced. Great, you insulted a box that can potentially make concepts real. It was a very mild insult. Well, let's hope it doesn't manifest an embodiment of your mom in quantum space. Kalith arrived in minutes, ears sharply angled, expression unreadable. She stepped into the bay and immediately began scanning the crate's open core. The mist thickened as she approached. The glyph has activated, she said. It is listening. Tallies raised a hand. Listening to what exactly? Kalith didn't answer immediately. Her fingers moved across the air as she manipulated the surrounding field. Vayari defense systems were never just mechanical. They required intent. The glyph you disturbed is called a rail and seed. It interprets nearby thought patterns and converts them into defensive simulations. Roan paled, like hallucinations, like sentient metaphors. Tallies muttered, I take it back. I don't want to be a metaphor. The lights flickered. A low hum began to rise from the crate. Kalith stepped back. It has engaged. Roan squinted into the mist. What's it manifesting? The air in front of them shimmered. A figure began to form. Not Kalith, not Roan, not Tallies. It looked like a hybrid of multiple forms, one human, one Vayari, one insectoid, one vaguely shaped like a breakfast appliance. Its voice, when it spoke, echoed with overlapping tones. Designation not understood, objective unclear, resolve contradiction. Roan raised a hand. Hi, I think we triggered a defense algorithm that doesn't know what we are. Friendly, mostly, occasionally chaotic. Definitely not worth vaporizing. Kalith stepped forward. It is responding to identity fragmentation. You must anchor its perception. Tallies looked at Roan. She means you. Roan sighed. Why is it always me? He took a step forward and held up both hands. All right, you funky projection of defense subroutines and trauma echoes. I'm Caleb Roan. Human, not a threat. Mostly, I fix things. Occasionally make them worse. But always with good intentions. The entity tilted its metaphorical head. Statement lacks cohesion. I'll give you cohesion. I once fixed an interspecies coffee machine with 3 coat hangers and a prayer. The being shimmered uncertainly. Kalith added, you must say something that defines you, core truth, resonant thought. Roan glanced at her. Do I have to be serious? Yes. He swallowed, then nodded. I'm the guy who talks too much because silence feels like giving up. I crack jokes when I'm scared. I get involved when I shouldn't. And I can't stop thinking about a diplomat who speaks less than anyone I've ever met, but who listens better than anyone I've ever known. The entity pulsed. The mist began to clear. Input recognized, it said. Contradiction resolved, simulation terminating. Then it vanished. Tallies let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it since childhood. Kalith stared at Roan. He cleared his throat, too honest. She looked away. It was sufficient. Roan rubbed his neck. So, did we pass the test? Kalith approached the crate and resealed it. The artifact will sleep again, for now. Tallies sat on a crate and groaned. Can I go back to fixing air vents now? They only scream at me occasionally. Kalith nodded toward him. You will be monitored. Roan laughed. Welcome to the team. As they left the bay, Kalith walked beside Roan, not speaking. After a while, she said, what you said about why you speak. Yeah, it is inefficient, but understandable. I'll take it. She paused. Also, my listening is selective. He looked at her. Selective how? She didn't answer, but her ears twitched. The station's emergency lights flickered for the 3rd time in an hour, which Roan decided was either a very subtle alarm or a desperate plea for attention. He leaned over the terminal and slapped the side of it. No, we are not doing existential dread today. We had that on Tuesday. Behind him, Kalith examined the stabilized crate containing the now-dormant rail and seed. The artifact remains inert. Its resonance levels have declined. Roan straightened. Good, I was running out of metaphors to yell at it. Tallies chimed in from the console. Still, can't believe we beat an ancient defense algorithm by getting emotionally vulnerable. I thought feelings were just things I ignored until they developed symptoms. Caliph raised an eyebrow. The artifact required a consistent identity signature. Emotional transparency provided cohesion. Roan crossed his arms. So you're saying I saved the station with my feelings? Yes, Caliph replied. Tallies muttered, we're all doomed. Station command had, predictably, not been thrilled. The report involved unauthorized Vayari tech activation, emotional weaponry, at least one attempted metaphysical projection of a toaster, and 3 recorded infractions involving a repurposed cleaning drone now under surveillance. Roan had argued persuasively that they could either file the paperwork or install a full translation matrix between every interspecies diplomatic AI on board. The paperwork won. The Raylan seed had been locked away, this time with actual safeguards and not just a do not touch sign in Galactic Common. Caliph had overseen the sealing herself. Roan stood beside her as the final layer was applied, an adaptive language field tuned to both their biosignatures. When the seal engaged, she turned to him. You are no longer considered an anomaly. Roan blinked. That's almost disappointing. She stepped closer. You are now classified as an irregular constant. He grinned. Promotion. Redefinition. They walked through the diplomatic wing in companionable silence. She didn't usually linger in shared spaces, but lately she did. Not always close, but always present. Roan had stopped trying to understand it, mostly because every time he tried to analyze what their interactions meant, he ended up tangled in metaphors involving comets and locked doors. She stopped outside the viewing chamber. Roan looked at her. You ever wonder why the universe insists on throwing dangerous ancient tech at us like it's testing something? Caliph replied. Perhaps it wishes to determine who is still willing to speak. Roan considered that. Or maybe it just wants company. They sat side by side. No emergencies, no AIs threatening to rewrite physics. Just the distant glow of planetary rings beyond the glass. Roan stretched. You know, I used to think quiet was awkward, like if no one was talking, something was wrong. Caliph turned her head slightly. But this kind of quiet, he added, it's good, solid, doesn't ask for anything. She didn't speak, but her ears tilted back gently. A chime broke the stillness. Roan checked his wrist pad. Command just approved my clearance for cross-species tech interface work, which, according to the memo, makes me either qualified or dangerously stubborn. Caliph nodded once. You have earned trust, even if unintentionally. I'll take it. He hesitated, then stood. Caliph, if you ever decide to leave the station, I will inform you. No, I mean, he rubbed his neck, I'd go with you. She studied him, even if silence follows. He smiled, especially then. She didn't respond immediately. Then, I believe you. Later, Roan returned to engineering, where Tallies had once again dismantled the station's auto-clean system and replaced it with a collection of AI cats that purred when sensors detected messes. One of them was now dragging a hydro spanner across the floor like it owed it money. Roan leaned on the console. Hey, you ever think we're the only thing keeping this place from turning into a diplomatic haunted house? Tallies threw a bolt at him. We are the haunted part. The cat AI meowed in agreement. Roan laughed. Fair. He checked the system logs. Everything stable. No resonance anomalies. No forgotten weapons waiting to spark. Just the usual chaos, predictable, manageable. Later still, he passed the Vayari wing on his way to quarters. Caliph was there, not standing at attention, just walking, ears relaxed. When she saw him, she stopped, tilted her head. He smiled. So, dinner. I do not require nutrition at this interval. I meant socially. Clarify parameters. He stepped closer. Talking, not talking, presence. Mutual appreciation of space and slightly undercooked noodles. She considered it. Acceptable, she said. They walked side by side toward the mess hall. Behind them, the station pulsed softly with life, its systems whole, its artifacts dormant, its humans and aliens coexisting in the most fragile, most stubborn, and most extraordinary kind of peace. And for once, Caleb Roan didn't need to speak. She had already heard him.